Thanks for joining us for Season 5 of the Service to School Stories podcast. I'm Sydney Mathis, your host and Chief Program Officer at Service to School. This season, we wanted to highlight some of our incredible alumni and dive deeper into their stories. You'll hear from a variety of student veterans about their journey from the military through the admissions process and onto campus. Guests will share how they overcame challenges, and we'll look back on their journey to give some advice along the way. Let's kick it off. Great. Welcome back to the Service to School Stories podcast. Today we are joined by Jacob Ashton. Jacob is Service to School Applicant turned Ambassador turned Director of Alumni Programming. So welcome to the Service to School team, Jacob, but also excited to have you on the podcast so you can share a little bit more about your journey, your story. And, I hope our listeners are able to take away some really great insight from your experience navigating higher education and now, looking forward to supporting Service to School. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited for this.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Jacob?
Sure. So I was born and raised in New Jersey. I joined the military when I was 22. I went into the Army as an infantryman, and I was stationed in Hohenfels, Germany for my entire contract. It definitely was not the right job for me. I should have picked a different MOS, but that's totally fine. Can't go back and change anything. After I got out, I worked as an EMT and went to community college. I stopped working as an EMT when COVID hit and just focused full time on school. When I was at my community college during my last semester, I met my girlfriend in biology class, and we've been together for the last 2 years. I am now a senior at Columbia University, majoring in political science, and I'm graduating in December.
Yes. Talk to me a little bit about, clarification. So you joined the military when you were 22. What did you do in between high school and joining the military?
It took me almost 4 years for me to join the military. My mom did not want me to go into the military. So after I told her that I was talking to recruiters, she started emailing them saying, don't take my son. He is not allowed to go, and ended up getting a family doctor to write up a letter saying that I had a medical condition that I didn't have and gave it to the recruiters. So 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave for basic training, they pulled me and said, you're not going anymore. So for the next 4 years, I had to make a White House petition. I had to work with a congressman to make an inquiry with the Department of Defense. And in the meantime, I was going to community college because I knew I just couldn't sit around and just wait for medical waivers to get approved.
Sure.
Eventually, I spoke with a recruiter after 4 years of trying in almost every branch of the military. And he said that unless I got myself cleared of that condition that was on the letter, I wouldn't be able to join. So I paid out of pocket to get genetic testing done, which proved that I didn't have that condition. And after 4 years of trying, I was finally able to get a medical waiver approved and going at 22.
I mean, talk about determination. What was it that was, really drawing you and pushing you towards joining the military?
I think growing up, I would watch a lot of the History Channel with my grandfather, and we would watch military movies. We would watch stuff about World War II, Vietnam War, and it was just always interesting to me. I think at the end of the day, I thought that if I were to join, I would end up deploying and I would help people that could need it. My initial job was, or when I was first enlisting, I was thinking about picking a special forces contract with the Army, but they said that there was a 5-year requirement, and if you failed any part of the training or the selection, you would have to get reclassed to the needs of the Army, which means I could be anything for 5 years, and I didn't even know if I would have liked the military at that point. So I decided that I was going to select the infantry, and if I liked it, I would try out for selection. I did not like it. Yeah.
So at what point were you like, okay, I thought this is kind of what I wanted to do, but now I'm ready to transition into the next chapter, post-military?
Possibly a year and a half to 2 years in. When I was in Germany, I ended up suffering from depression, and I realized that being active duty is not the best place for dealing with any type of mental health crisis. I don't think that there's anything wrong with the military. It's just I needed to get some help, and being on active
Mhm.
duty was not going to afford me the chance to get the help that I would have needed. So after the 2 year mark around that point, I just said, okay, when my contract is up, I need to just get out and just transition and take care of everything that's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, smart of you though to say it sounds like at certain points in your life you've been like, I need to do some, self-reflection, think about what's going to, allow me to chart a path forward that's going to lead to long-term success. And I think that's such an important part of the college admissions process too, right? Like those essays, admissions is asking you to write, kind of essays and telling stories about yourself that you've never really had to think to answer before. So when you were transitioning off of active duty, you had taken some community college classes. So it sounds like you knew education was going to be kind of your next path. Is that correct?
I didn't 100% know it, but when I was transitioning out of active duty, I was able to get connected with a mentor through another nonprofit organization called American Corporate Partners. And they assigned me a mentor that worked in finance. And I told him that my initial goal would be to get out, go into banking. He said, "You're going to have to go to college." So I figured, I said, okay, maybe I should learn about my benefits, use the GI Bill, and go back and get my degree.
Yeah. So did you move home afterwards and that's where you started taking those classes?
Yes. So I
Yeah.
moved right back to my old hometown and I went back to the original community college.
Okay. So when you started taking community college classes, what classes did you start with?
I decided to major in business for my associate's degree, so I had to take a bunch of accounting classes, public speaking, entrepreneurship classes, just things that would be generally applicable to transfer to other colleges, but
Mhm.
also good for somebody that just wants to finish an associate's degree and enter the workforce.
Yeah. And what was it like kind of diving back into an academic mindset? What were kind of some tools or things that you did to ease that transition?
I was really nervous at first because I was 26 when I got out and I was in class with a bunch of 18-year-olds. And at first, I was very confused, angry. I felt like I was out of place because a few of my, or many of my peers from high school, they've already graduated from college. They were already in their career, married, and some even had kids at that point. And I said, I'm 26 and I'm going back to school. But I did a lot of reading growing up, especially when I was in the military, about Stoicism and philosophy. And I realized that putting in the hours to be able to go back to school and get my degree will help me out in the long run. And when I was in classes with the 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, and early 20s, I came to realize that there's nothing wrong with being in class with people that are younger than you. In fact, it's kind of a good thing because you're learning different perspectives, and it's even beneficial for the younger students because they get to learn from you and bounce questions off you that they might be too nervous to answer the teachers. So, in a way, you get to turn into an informal mentor to some of the students in the classes, which feels nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a concern and a fear for a lot of our applicants is that age barrier. And I know, as an ambassador, you've probably talked with applicants about that too. So, just leaning into, like you said, the differing perspectives and the opportunity to bring unique and lived experiences to students that probably have never spoken with a lot of veterans, have never spoken with, adults outside of their kind of parent circle. So it's really an incredible opportunity to your point, be a mentor, but also to share, things that you've seen, things that you've experienced, that a lot of times directly relate to what you're learning in the classroom. I was having a conversation with an applicant the other day, and I was like, one of the really cool things about going back to college as an adult is you understand the class content on a different level, right? You understand how you're going to use, maybe your history class or writing in your workplace. So it takes a little bit of I don't know, like a stronger impression on, your work ethic, right?
Yeah, it definitely does. And the professors notice that too. There's a vast difference between an 18-year-old that's fresh out of high school versus the 22-year-old that just got out of the military and they're enrolled in their first class. You'll see some students show up late to class in pajamas, not show up on time, not even have their work done, while the 22-year-old has everything done 2 or 3 days before classes even started, and they're sitting in the class 15 minutes before the professor even gets there.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your relationship with your professors. How is the relationship with professors different from relationships with leadership in the military, do you think?
It's a lot more relaxed in the sense that the military has their own set of rules and structures. When I was or still at Columbia, I've had professors who have their PhDs who said, just call me Luke. And I kind of freaked out. I said, what do you mean? I thought that I would have to call you Doctor, whatever your name is, or Professor. And it was a culture shock. For me, it was good because I really like relaxed environments. I like being on a first name basis or just not being so strict. But
Yeah.
professors definitely hold you to a different standard when you're coming out and they know that you're military.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that too, like, so many times with applicants, they're like, "I didn't know I could just talk with admissions." I didn't know I could just go talk with a professor or ask a professor for a letter of recommendations. Like, yes, that's what they're there for. They are there to build those relationships with you and to have those conversations that, are engaging on a level of I mean, they love the work they're doing. That's usually why people go into teaching at the college levels because they just genuinely enjoy the topics. So really great insight there for applicants listening for sure. When you were at community college, obviously knowing transferring was on your radar, right? You have an associate's degree. Now you have to transfer once in order to earn your bachelor's degree. What was your thought process around applying to schools to transfer?
So at the time, and let me apologize to my current girlfriend, I was dating a flight attendant and I had to pick schools that were near major airports just in case we decided to go to a school or to another location and had to move. So that was one of the major parts of why I was choosing the location. I was only
Mm.
choosing Harvard, Princeton, Columbia, as well as a few safety schools. But I primarily wanted places that were on the East Coast so I could be there for work and then as well as for my family. But at the time, I also had to take into consideration my career goals and then veteran benefits and then the culture of the school. At the time, I thought that I was going to go into economics and go into investment banking because I was told, oh, you're a veteran, you just
That's
get
what you
out
do.
and either you're going to become a police officer or you're going to go into finance and work 80 hours a week. And that's going to be your life until you retire. I said, oh, I don't know any better. So I decided to apply for Columbia, Harvard, and Princeton. And I was actually rejected by all three schools the first time around.
That is, I think Services School has done a really great job of providing opportunities for students in these institutions, right? But I think the ability to say, I was denied from all of these schools from the jump, right? Like, it is not as easy, I think, as our social media highlights or when you hear from other veterans, it is still not as easy to get into these incredibly selective, highly respected and regarded institutions. So I love when I hear from an applicant that was like, I was denied from all of them the first time. I'm like, yeah, that's reality. That's a reality for a lot of our applicants is that they aren't getting in the first time. So obviously that's not the answer that you want to hear from admissions, but how did you process that and what did you do in order to kind of, pick yourself up and continue moving forward?
I won't lie and say, oh, I was totally fine. It definitely stung because I said, okay, I have a very strong application. I have a good support system, and people are telling me, you're going to get in, no worries. And when I got all three rejections, I said, wow, that's that was rough and that was very unexpected. But I had an interview with Columbia University with one of their admissions officers, and somebody told me that you can actually reach back out to them and ask them to do a feedback interview and ask if there was anything wrong. So I requested one, we met, and he said that the only issue that I had with my application and everything was I wanted to major in economics and I didn't have any math classes on my transcript. So he said, go back, do really well in these math classes, and then reapply. So I took those math classes, went to all the extra tutoring sessions, asked for all the extra credit that I could possibly get. I did well and reapplied, and they let me in.
What were the math classes?
They were two pre-calculus classes.
Okay.
So that's a good thing, guys. You don't need to be at Calc 3 or Calc 4 to be able to get into these schools. Take your pre-calcs, you'll be fine.
Yeah, and getting a really solid math foundation through pre-calc, I mean, that is kind of we've started to tell students math and some humanities classes, English composition classes, like show them that you have a foundation of learning and your academic potential. And that is really, what they are looking to grab onto in the admissions process. Sure, do we have some veterans that, are all the way up through Calc 2 and they are just, the math whiz comes natural to them 100%. But I would say for the average applicant listening, if math wasn't your thing, let's get college algebra, some pre-calc under your belt. And that is, typically where we see a competitive applicant fall. So that tracks. So reapplied, we're admitted to Columbia. Talk to me a little bit about that transition to Columbia from community college. Just, the classroom dynamics, campus dynamics. What was the difference in that experience like for you?
It was night and day. I don't want to scare anybody that's thinking about transferring from a community college up to an Ivy League school or to another top rated school. There will be a major difference in the amount of work that you get. It'll be exponentially larger, but it's there for a reason. I view that these schools are extremely competitive and they know it. They're going to give you the workload so they can keep their name and everything that comes with those schools. For me, I had to move to New York for my first semester because I didn't want to commute every single day. I took Russian, Chinese foreign politics, and an art history class my first semester. My advisor there, he didn't tell me, hey, this might not be the best idea. Russian was a 5 credit class. I met 4 days a week for an hour and a half each day. Chinese foreign politics was almost an advanced level political science class, and I was in the wrong art history class.
Oh,
So it was very hard for me the first semester. So it would be maybe 10 hours, actually about 10 hours of class and homework per day. So it's the equivalent of a full-time job. So
yep.
good advice for the applicants. If you go to these schools, I don't recommend working, especially if it's your first semester or even your first year. I would rely strictly on the BAH that you would get from the GI Bill or from whatever other benefit that you might be using. But going back to the first semester part, it was made a little bit more challenging because I was diagnosed with cancer my first semester there, around October, November timeframe of 22. So I had to finish out my semester while getting ready to go through treatment. So that was a little bit rough trying to balance medical appointments, going to school, back to New Jersey, and all the homework and things like that.
Yeah,
But I think it made me stronger.
absolutely. How are your professors? Because I think one thing our applicants don't realize, and kind of going back to that, like building
Mhm.
relationship with your professors conversation, when life gets tough, how do you work with your professors and the institution to navigate that? We have a lot of students that will just stop going to class. And then now, that impacts their transcript because they either have incompletes or withdrawals. How did you navigate that with your professors and the university?
I think it's definitely the wrong answer to just not show up anymore. As we're all humans, especially professors, when they're outside of the classroom, they have a family, they have medical appointments, they have things that are going on in their life, just like we do. I recommend just setting up a meeting, going to their office hours, or just sending them an email and just being open and honest with them and say, hey, my kids are in the hospital, my wife is sick, I'm sick, I have all of these things going on. Ask for an extension on your homework, on an assignment, or if there's anything you could do to at least pass the class, because the last thing you want to do is go this far into a semester and have to retake it and pay back the VA. Professors,
Mhm.
for the most part, they're going to understand and try to help you out at the end of the day, as long as you're honest, open, and you come early.
Yeah, that's great advice, and we hear that like I said, we hear that so often. They're like, "Well, I don't wanna withdraw because then I have to, pay back," and so they just stop going, and I'm like, "Well, now you have Fs or incompletes on your transcript," and it's just an uphill battle to try and get those grades, removed, without, kinda jumping through hoops. So, absolutely 100% work with the university, work with your professors as much as you can. To your point, they are, for the most part, understanding of your experience and your unique circumstances. Um, what has been your favorite part about Columbia?
I would say the people. It's very nice that there's a huge amount of veterans that are on campus, as well as the undergraduate population of the people that are in the regular Columbia College. For the people that don't know, there are a few different schools at Columbia. There's the CC, which is Columbia College, which are the people that go straight from high school into Columbia. There's the School of General Studies, or the GS program, which I'm in, which is the program for non-traditional students. So anybody that went into the military, just apply to that. Then there's an all-girls school called Barnard. When you're in GS, you are in the classes with everybody and you don't get treated any differently. The workload is the same as if you were straight from high school as one of those kids from an elite private school who were going into that. And the people that I've met, 99% of them, they just want to ask you what you did in the military because they think it's exciting. Even if you don't think it's cool, you're talking to somebody who is living in the city for the first time away from home, maybe had one part time job growing up. So they'll be fascinated when they hear about your story. You might say,
Mhm.
I was just an infantryman or just human resources. They're going to say, wow, you lived in another country. And it's nice.
Yeah, that's really cool. What other kind of resources did you take advantage of on campus?
They have a free tutoring center on campus, a writing center with master's and PhD level students who have to help out other undergraduate students. So that helps out a lot. And there's also a giant organization called MilVets, which is the military group of students at Columbia. And they set up a lot of networking events and job fairs, things like that. Sorry, I was just saying I used the Career Center on campus, and that was a changer.
That was a game changer. Talk to us a little bit about that. What was the biggest, positive of working with the Career Center there?
Most of it, I would say, is my resume. My resume before working with the Career Center was really bad. I didn't have anything necessarily wrong with my resume, but I used a resume builder, which used some crazy template that I said, oh, this looks super cool. This employer's going to love it. But then I found out through the Career Center that most of the time it's not an employer that's going to be reading your resume at first. It's going to go through an AI system
Yep.
and they can't read all of those templates. So your resume will just get kicked back. So the career counselor met with me about 7 or 8 times within 1 year, and we were able to type up an entire Word document, which is going to fall in line with the AI. So it's not going to get kicked out. And it helped out a lot. I'm here now.
Yeah. Yeah, here you go. You got a job. Pivoting towards that. So this is technically today, Friday, November 1st, is your first day on staff here at Service to School. Really excited to have you here, building out our new alumni programming and just providing better support and resources to student veterans on campus. So, one of the questions we asked in your interview was, what do you think is the biggest challenge for student veterans on college campuses today? So, I'm going to pose that same question to you here for our listeners. What's your answer?
I think that it is finding your community. There's a lot of people when they're in the military, they're everybody that they serve with is their family or someone that they're just very close with. And when you get out and you're going into a new environment, such as school or just the workforce in general, you might feel alone. But when you go to one of these schools and you see that they have an established veteran club or a veteran network, it makes a huge difference with your mental health and you'll feel like you belong there.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. That's a lot of what we're trying to kind of encourage through this new alumni program. We have veterans at some incredible institutions across the country and wanting to help them find their people, their space, but also navigating that transition to campus. So talking about, okay, well, what does healthcare look like? Do you have a VA, close by? What does it look like to find housing? What does it look like to establish those relationships with your professors? So knowing that that's kind of the program that you will be building, what are you most excited about?
I honestly, I'm most excited with getting people connected to their resources and to their benefits that they've earned. I've helped so many people already, either with transitioning to their bachelor's degree program through service to school. I've helped people get set up with their VA disability benefits, the VA healthcare. I want to be able to share these resources because it is literally a lifeline when you don't have to worry because you're going to have a VA disability check coming in, or if you have healthcare provided by the VA and you don't have to pay out of pocket for a major surgery. For instance, if I did not go through the VA for when I had that cancer situation, I would have been charged about $250,000 with just MRIs and then my surgery.
Yeah.
And the VA saved my life because of
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely. And to your point, I mean, just a lifeline, understanding that there are resources out there that a lot of our student veterans don't know about, thinking about like academic accommodations or a housing waiver. If a college has a on-campus living requirement, like how can we help our student veterans navigate some of the bureaucracy of higher education, just so they can have a better on-campus experience? Because it's one thing to help veterans get to college, but our whole goal here is to help them transition to their next chapter of leadership. And by completing that degree, that's, us fulfilling our mission. So really excited to have you, kind of leading the charge, advocating for your veteran peers, and helping us kind of get this new program off the ground. So with that, as we begin to wrap up the conversation, looking forward, what are you most excited about? And then looking back, what advice do you have for our listeners?
I'm most excited to set up these networking events and these job fairs for veterans in all these areas. So we would be able to figure out which industries a lot of our veterans want to go to. I'm going to be setting up events, possibly with other nonprofit organizations, so we can get veterans connected to all the resources that they're going to need and hopefully get them hired.
Absolutely. And then looking back, what's your advice for applicants?
My advice would be to first take care of your mental health, because without that, nothing else is going to really matter or fall in line. Even if you need to take a semester off or two, take care of the personal things that are going on inside of your life before trying to dive deep into a major course load. School's still going to be there, and it really doesn't matter if you start your bachelor's degree at 22, 30, or 40. I'm in class with 50-year-olds, and they're saying, like, wow, I'm so happy to be here. Don't let your age deter you. Just go to school and get your degree. It's worth it.
Yes, absolutely. Well, with that, we are, like I said, just thrilled to have you on the team here. Really excited for the future of that program. Any of our listeners, obviously working with Service to School on the application side, but this new to and through alumni program will be launched shortly with Jacob at the helm. And I know it's going to be successful. You're just an incredible influence in this space. So thank you for being here, sharing your story on the Service to School Stories podcast. And we will chat later.
Thank you.
That's all we have for this episode. Join us next week, same time, same place, where we share more Service to School stories. Service to School Stories is hosted by Sydney Mathis, Chief Program Officer, and Alec Emmert, Service to School CEO. Our podcast is produced and edited by our Director of Communication, Amanda Tobias. Service to School is a 501c3 nonprofit providing free college admission support to transitioning service members and veterans. Join us next week and follow us for more on your favorite social media platforms.